to the Goody Room, your one-stop shop for everything movies, TV, and more. We know you want the goodies. Welcome back to the Goody Room. I'm your host, Matt the Nachos. With me always is my guy in the chair, Frankie Rock. Say hello to the people, Frank.
Hello, people.
As always, we want to welcome you in. We want to thank all 10 of our subscribers. Thank you. Thank you. Especially Frank's dad.
Yes.
One of our only supporters.
Thanks, Dad.
Remember to follow, like, and subscribe. It does motivate us, keeps these videos coming out. We're doing some new things. We got a new project on the horizon, Frank, don't we?
We do. And it's very sophisticated. I'm talking tea and crumpet sophisticated.
Yeah, you're gonna have the pinky out for this one?
Oh, a little pinky out. Just a taste. Just a taste.
But the fancy pinky, not like the Dr. Evil pinky, $1 million.
No. Like the very fancy pinky,
Very fancy.
Yeah.
Well, on today's episode, we got a full streamer botch. Frank and I, we've been watching a lot. There's a lot of stuff out. We were just talking about it the other day, Frank. Like, there's just a lot of options right now.
It's overbearing, and it wasn't until we were texting like, hey, we're going to talk about this, talk about that, I didn't realize how much I actually been watching. In fact, when people had been asking me at work or whatever, like, what have you been watching? I've been saying, I can't really remember, or I don't think anything. But then when you were bringing up something, I was like, oh, wait, I did watch that. So.
Right. I actually, just for the purposes of, our podcast, I had to start making a list because it's now become so much. I'm starting to forget the things that I've actually seen. And I want you, the people, the listeners, all 10 of you to know the things that we've been watching.
Well, I think it's the first one on Streamer Botch tonight. We have been talking about, like, we're going to talk about that next episode. And this has been like 4 episodes ago when we actually watched this one. But
yeah. Great transition. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Right. So, again, this segment, we're going to bring up these different shows, movies, that we've seen recently. We're going to tell you whether or not it's a stream, whether or not it was a botch. A botch meaning we don't think it's worth your time, or maybe, pass on this one, check out something else. And the first one we got here is Gran Turismo. So, if you remember, very popular video game, right? Turned into a movie, kind of real life story, right? Frank, I watched it on Netflix. I think you did as well too.
I did.
Yeah. So what it does is if it follows the story, I forget the gentleman's name, but he was very interested in racing. He was doing a lot of virtual, racing, and that actually became a really popular thing at a time. And Nissan wanted to try something different. They wanted to try and turn sim drivers into professional drivers. Because if you think about it, sim driving it can't mimic the real life kind of situations, right? But you can mimic the tracks. You can set up the car, right? You could do all these different things. You could test different lines on these tracks. And so in theory, these sim drivers have really put in more track time than professional drivers. And I mean, there's a lot more that goes into real driving. If you actually watch like anything like Drive to Survive, or we'll talk about it on another future streamer botch, but NASCAR Full Speed, it is very intense endurance. To just handle the car at those speeds is incredible.
And I guess I never really thought of it until I've watched certain documentaries and this movie, which is obviously it's based on a true story. Whether or not all of it's true, I don't know. But the mental dedication you need to have, and have such a sharp mind just to be able to react in those scenarios. And it's not just a physical thing. It is there is, like, I would say it's probably like 80% mental, 20% physical. Yeah, you got to be in shape to drive those cars. But man, holy cow, like, when in the scenes in the movie, spoiler alert, the racing scenes are the best part. Like, I thought they're not as the best racing scenes I've seen, but I thought they were really well done, especially, he does crash at one point. And I couldn't help but think like, oh, I would have probably died in this situation. I wouldn't have made it through the sim driving academy.
Yeah, and I think the mental part is something that people don't really think about. Think how fast these cars are going. You have a split second to make these decisions, right?
Right.
So it does take a lot of, simulation, test driving. Even professionals do the sim driving. You have to know these courses in and out. You have to know when the turns are coming, right? You have to be able to anticipate what, the other cars around you are going to do. And like I said, it's it could be like you said, there are crashes, right? It's
Right.
live or die, right? And you have a split second to make these decisions. I got to be honest, I wasn't really interested in watching this. Usually movies that go directly to Netflix or another streaming service, that's kind of a red flag for me.
Yeah.
It normally didn't do well enough, to justify like a purchase, like period time, and so they just put it right on the streaming service.
When this movie was first announced, I actually laughed. And I was just like, what is that going to be? Because I remember playing the video game as a kid on PS2. I think it was Gran Turismo 2 or 3, whatever one was out for PS2. And when I saw the trailer and I saw, the cop from Stranger Things was in it, and then, you know, Legolas, aka the Hare, according to my wife, from Lord of the Rings, was in it. Orlando Bloom. It got my attention a little bit. I was like, oh well, I mean, those are pretty good actors, so maybe it's not half bad. It came out, and I'll tell you, if it wasn't on Netflix, I would have never watched this movie. Just never would have watched it. And I went in with the no expectation whatsoever. I really enjoyed this one. I wouldn't tell you to go out and buy it, but it's if it's still on Netflix. I know we watched it December, and now it's February when we're talking about it. I if it's still on Netflix, definitely give it the first 20 minutes or so. You might be surprised.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the only reason I watched it. I would not have watched it otherwise. And, like I said, I wasn't interested when it first even came out. There have been other game movies. Game movies aren't there's not a lot of successful ones, right? And they've
Right.
done amazing game movies before. But like you said, if it's on Netflix, I'm already paying for Netflix, so I might as well check it out. It was entertaining, but obviously, like you said, it's a driving movie. The race scenes are the best scenes, right? Go figure,
Shocker.
right? But it is a bit choppy, in my opinion. There's not a lot of great transitions. The story, it is what it is, right? Like you already know what's going to happen. So it was kind of one of those things I had on. I wasn't really paying attention. I would say stream if it's free, right? Or you're already paying for a service and it's available. Botch if you have to pay for it.
Right. And I would agree 100%. But I do want to, our 10 listeners out there, let us know if you want us to do an episode on video games that became movies, because there's quite a few of them. We've seen a few. They've gotten better in the last couple years, but, I would love to talk about some really bad ones. I'm looking at you, Max Payne.
Oh, I used to play that game too.
Oh, yeah, right.
All right. We'll go ahead and I think we you have our answer on that one. So let us know what you think. Moving on here, as next streamer Botch, we have the Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
I feel like you could have done snakes a little sexier. You want to try it again?
I really don't know. That's as best I can do.
Okay. I'm giving it all I got.
Yeah. How about no on that one? Right? You got jokes tonight, huh?
I do. I'm all wound up. What do you want from me?
So, this is something I was interested in going to the theater and seeing. It had been a little bit of time since I had been to the theater, and every once in a while you kind of get that itch, you got to go. You want to just experience it. And I mean, the Hunger Games, those were big movies, when they came out, and I
10
liked the
years
first
ago.
one. Yeah, I liked the first one. I liked the second one. the last two, it was like what was a two-part, trilogy, to end it, and this is a prequel, right? So if you're interested in like President Snow, it's kind of about him and like when he was like at the Capitol Academy and how his character really develops like early on. And I thought the interesting part about this is I know Frank, you read the book and you were asking me some things about it, but it's really like a primitive version of the Hunger Games that you probably saw back in the day with Jennifer Lawrence, right? um, so and like what I mean like that is like this is like it's literally like a coliseum. Like these people are like gladiators. They go in. There's no like fancy tech, nothing. They just have a bunch of weapons in the middle, and it's supposed to be over in like minutes.
Right. Now, I know that because I haven't seen the movie, but I have read the book and I love the book. I thought it was great. And I know, and I actually read the Hunger Games trilogy for the very first time around this time last year, and I thought they were great. I had seen the movies, but I finally got around to reading the books. And Jennifer Lawrence's character, Katniss, her Hunger Games are like number 74 and number 75. I believe in this prequel, it's like number 10 or 15 or something like that.
Yep, number 10.
So, at this point in the time, the Hunger Games weren't the event that they were by the time Katniss comes along. They're just like really like, hey, we're doing this to send a message to the people. There's no dressing up. There's no mystique or glamour about it. It's just raw. And I did not expect that going into the book. I was very surprised by it. I haven't seen the movie yet because I've heard so many people tell me it's one of the best adaptations because it's literally the book. It's beat for beat the book. So the book's still pretty fresh in my mind. That's why I haven't watched it yet. But if it's anything like the book, I definitely think it's worth your time, especially if you like the other one. But I know my dad, our number one listener, wants to know this, and I'm kind of curious too. Does Donald Sutherland show up at any time as old President Snow?
No, he doesn't.
Ah,
I was kind of waiting for like a kind of big reveal at the end or something like kind of like a little time lapse,
sure.
thing that went on. But no, that never actually occurs. But yeah, like you said, I'm glad you brought up that it's the 10th one because they're really still struggling with this concept of the Hunger Games, right? People are rebelling and they're really trying to get a grip on it. And they're considering actually even removing the games because people just don't want to watch. There's no entertainment on it, they don't understand it. And it's kind of a double edged, like actually, Snow, he's just a kid in school, and his family had a little bit of power when he was a kid, and there was the big rebellion, the reason the Hunger Games came to be, right? And he isn't a fan of it. He's not. I mean, part of the reason he's doing it is because his family is poor. They're about to lose like their status in the capital and basically be cast out to the districts. He's trying to get this scholarship basically that will allow him to remain and go and attend like the higher education in the capital to eventually become, you know, one of these power people again and kind of save his family legacy. And that's really what he's striving for. And in the Hunger Games, you know how in the Candace Everdeen series, right? They all have like kind of coaches and capital like officials who kind of train them,
Mentors. Yeah.
yeah, mentors and stuff like that. So they don't have like previous champion mentors. So that's like an idea I think that comes like later on from Snow. uh, but in this one, what these students become and what Snow is they are each assigned a tribute. So little Tyrion Lannister, right? he's
Right.
he is their teacher in the movie, and he basically has like a vendetta against him. So he makes sure that he assigns him this little girl from District 12, and they really develop a relationship. And the reason really because he has a motivation to win this award, and whose ever tribute wins it, which he should have already gotten it. It was like the valedictorian would get this, but now they kind of screwed him, and they said, whose ever tribute wins in the Hunger Games, they get the award. So this really kind of starts that whole kind of mentorship kind of thing, and he starts to influence some of these games with some of his ideas, like being able to take donations and send like water and food into the arena via drone,
Right. And
right? So that's where a lot of this starts.
one of the things that I really thought in the book, and it sounds like the movie followed suit with, we've seen many prequels now. It's a trend. It could be a genre in itself. And I always use Han Solo or Solo, a Star Wars story, as the poor example of how to do a prequel or parts of a prequel. You know, the one thing that the Hunger Games didn't fall into was with Han Solo, like they were literally showing how every little thing happened, like even down to how he got his gun, how he got his nickname, which we didn't need any of that. I thought the Hunger Games gave you just enough, or the Ballad of Songbirds gave you just enough. Like you got to see like how the donations came to be. You get an answer of how the games came to be, like where the idea came from, and it wasn't this over the top, like kind of shoehorned in thing. I thought they really did those parts well, with leaving enough still in a mystery. Like when you said we don't see why previous people who won are now the mentors and everything. And I think either that will probably be explored in a future book or movie, but I thought it was really well done in that area.
Yeah, so I think what I want to explain to people too is that it's not a prequel really about the Hunger Games. It's a prequel about Snow and
Mm.
his character development into becoming what he eventually became, as you know him as President Snow in the Candace Everdeen series.
And a lot of people who have read the book, if you go on Goodreads, which Matt is an app where you can log books and review them and things
I
like
don't
that.
I don't read.
Yes, I know. That's why I'm explaining it to you. The people. Anyway, so a lot of people reviewed the book as slow and boring, blah 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 blah, and it's like it's a character study, and it shows how this innocent-ish young boy becomes this tyrannical leader, and you don't get the full show of how he ends up as President Snow at number 74 of the Hunger Games, but you definitely see the seeds start to be planted. And it's like, it's totally believable that this little boy grows up to be Donald Sutherland. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm going to give a quote here because it doesn't really, like, you already know it's a prequel. You already know what he becomes and stuff like that. But, like, this is his journey into becoming that. And at the end, the woman who's the game master at the time, right, she actually takes him under her wing, and he studies, under her. And she, at the
And
beginning of
she's
the
nuts. She is insane.
she's psycho,
Yeah,
right? At the beginning of the movie, she asks him what the Hunger Games are about, and he says it's punishment for the districts for rebelling. And at the end of the movie, she says, "Now let me ask you, what are the Hunger Games about?" And he's like, "I used to think it was about the districts and punishment for rebellion, but now I know that the world is an arena, and we are like we're all fighting for it."
exactly. And you know what? Not even though I had just said like I'm gonna wait to watch a movie a little bit, just by I got goosebumps. Remember, because that was in the book too, and I just remember like putting the book down and thinking like, "Holy crap! This is how did this get bad reviews as a book? It was great."
Yeah, I mean, so I honestly, so I bought it, and Frank and I have talked about this in the past. Sometimes when these things come on these like similar cinema releases, right? It doesn't make sense to do the cinema like rental. It's $20. You might as well pay the extra $5 and just buy the thing. So I did buy this because I was going to go to the theater. I was going to check it out. So I did check. I did have to buy it on the cinema kind of pre, order, buy, whatever you want to call it. I do think it will hit a streaming service if you just hold out. I would recommend doing that and streaming it then if it lands on one of the services that you have.
I would recommend the book. Again, haven't seen the movie, want to see the movie, but the book was excellent. Um, it what as good as the book was, I will say it's no Catching Fire. Catching Fire remains the crown jewel of the series, both movie and books.
All right, moving on. We have American Nightmare. So, Frank, why don't you take this one? Tell people what this is about.
So this is a documentary series on Netflix. 3 very short episodes. I think the longest one is like 42 minutes, and it chronicles a true story that happened out in California, I believe in 2014, 2015. And this guy and his girlfriend, do a little date night. They're just out and about, whatever. They come back, they order pizza. That it's just typical.
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time. Your standard Friday night, as I would call it. So they're having their standard Friday night. They go to bed, and it's like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and there's someone in their room, and he drugs them. Kidnaps the girl and leaves the guy drugged, and he wakes up and he goes to the police, and even explaining, I'm thinking like, yeah, this story sounds bizarre and made up. The police immediately are like, what did you do to her? And episode 1 is all about the guy's perspective, and you're like convinced he's just lying. And then we get a few other perspectives in episode 2 and 3. I'm not going to spoil anything, but man, like, it leaves you just kind of feeling in that limbo of like, I don't know, blah blah blah. You just don't know what's going on until the very end. And I thought it was, for a documentary series, they did a very good job of like keeping you in the dark.
Yeah, I came home, and believe it or not, my wife had watched this. She was like, "Did you watch American Nightmare yet?" And I was like, "So you watched something without me?" And
Right.
just to give you an idea, guys, she doesn't watch anything. I have to like drag her into like watching stuff that I think she'll be interested in. So the fact that she watched this without me was surprising to me, and I watched it afterwards. But Frank, I think you were even telling me about it. And you're talking about this guy like who comes in to like kidnap this woman at 3, 4 a.m. I was like, who's this guy, Roy Kent? Right.
Right. Right. And it's funny because as I'm watching this, the guy, he's like setting it up for you. I
Yeah.
leaned over to my wife, which it's funny because one of our first dates that my wife and I went on was to go see the movie Gone Girl, which probably as like a first date, like one of our first dates is like not the ideal movie.
That's an awful first date
I
movie.
know, but that was what was out, and I had read the book. I wanted to see it anyway. I leaned over to her, and before I could say, we both said it at the same time. We were like, "This is Gone Girl," And in episode 1, one of the policemen, you see him on the camera, when they're interviewing the guy, and he walks in the other room, and it's still on camera, and he says to the other cop, he goes, "This is like Gone Girl. We're gonna catch this guy." And it's like, wait a minute, did you finish the movie Gone Girl? He was innocent. So it's blown out of proportion so quickly. And again, it's tense, and it's just like unnerving, and you just don't know what's happening.
Well, and they even started calling it the Gone Girl case. And
Right.
so like you said, this guy, he goes in, trying to get help, and I'll be honest, he was a little too calm for my taste, and the story is ridiculous. He's talking about, like you said, he's getting you know duct taped up, right? He's being forced to drink NyQuil. He has goggles that have tape over top of them. The guy's like politely like it's sitting him, and it's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know," or, "Hey, let me help you with that." And
Right.
it's very strange.
It's
And
very peculiar. And so this doesn't give anything away, but my initial thought when I heard the story and, heard all the evidence from the guy's perspective, I said to myself, it's so ridiculous that there's no way it's not true.
I said the
Because
same.
like, because I always think to myself, you could give me 100 years in a room alone with a typewriter. I would never be able to come up with any of that. You know what I mean?
And you're watching this too, and they're showing you videotape of like when he's, explaining what happened to the police, and they take his clothes, they put him in jail clothes, like
Yeah.
acting like they're helping him, and it's almost like they're getting them ready to throw in a prison cell because they've already made up their mind, that it's him, and
You-
they're really like drilling into him, trying to just get him to confess. And I'm sitting there like yelling at the screen, "Get a lawyer,
We
dude!"
all were. We all were. And you know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of Stephen Avery's nephew from that other show. What was that show called?
Yeah, I forget what that. Oh man,
Making a Murderer? Was it Making a
Making
Murderer?
a Murderer.
Yes.
Yes, yes. But I thought of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't care right, wrong, or indifferent, innocent. I just feel like everybody should know, like, you're being pulled into that room. You need a lawyer. Even you have the right to say, hold on, I want to call my lawyer, you know?
Yeah, and like in the shame of it is that he really is just looking for like help, right? Like
Right.
he did the right thing, and it's almost like he should have called a lawyer first and then
Right.
went to the police.
And I'm not one of these people that are sitting here, bad mouthing the police. No, because you think about it, the police in that situation, you're that policeman. You're hearing this story. Obviously, you're thinking like this is so insane. Like, obviously this guy did it.
Right.
So it's kind of like one of those doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. I think that's a catch-22 situation, if I'm using that phrase correctly. I'm not sure.
Well, and one of the things too is like if I was that police, I'd be thinking the same thing, right? Because
Sure.
most of the time that's the case, right? And it
Yeah.
it sounds like he's trying to kind of cover his tracks.
There's
Uh,
a statistic, like if the wife goes missing, it's like 90% chance it's the husband, right? And it's very small that it is not the husband.
Right, and like all these series go, like as the episodes go on, it gets stranger and stranger. Like the things that start happening, like this kidnapper, like because the police call it a hoax, right?
Mhm.
They went on tape. They called it a hoax because, I not to give anything away. I'm just trying to tell what it's about, right? But she ends up coming back.
And that in itself, like, only adds to the strangeness. And I'm
Like
not
Gone Girl, she comes
right.
back.
She comes back, and I'm not trying to take any sides here. It's an unfortunate situation, no matter how you spin it. But I'm the policeman. This girl reappears out of thin air. Of course, I'm gonna be like suspicious about that. I want to know answers, and part of the reason what adds to that suspicion, again, is this doesn't really spoil it. When she returns, she refuses questions for like 2 or 3 days. That not a
I
good
was
look.
like, I was like, what?
Right.
I was like, you're not gonna go speak or say anything. I thought that was so strange too.
Me too. I mean, I get that it was traumatic, whatever you may or may not have went through. Not trying to spoil, but like at the same time, it's like, oh, there. Whew. I mean, who knows what we would do in that situation? It's kind of like that old harkens back to when you watch a horror movie and it's like, why would they run up the stairs? Blah blah blah. And it's like, here's the thing: you're in that situation. No one knows how to react in that situation because that doesn't happen. That's not, as the Joker would say, part of the plan. You know what I mean?
I'm just thinking about Scream, where they start like listing out like the things not to do in these
And
types of.
everybody knows.
Everyone does it, and they all die. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah. So she comes back, refuses questioning. So the police call it a hoax. Well, now these two people, like, this happened to them. Now they're kind of alienated from their jobs and society, and it gets even stranger because the kidnapper then starts emailing one of the writers, like, for this, like, I forget if it was like a newspaper or whatever,
Right.
like pictures of things saying like, hey, this really happened to them and you need to go and like back them up.
I'm gonna hit pause on this because if we keep going, we're
Okay.
gonna give the whole thing away. However, I think by the way that we're talking about it, it's a stream from both of us. It's on Netflix. It's called American Nightmare. again, 3 very short episodes. You can do it in an afternoon, or if you're my wife and I, in a Friday night, so.
Yeah, someone like, our friend, one of our friends, he would say, we spoiled it for him, and I would say, well, if you just read the description and you read that it's a Gone Girl case and you've seen Gone Girl, then you already know what happens.
Exactly. But, it's not necessarily the same, but that Gone Girl and American Nightmare could be family. We'll just put it that way.
It is definitely a stream for me. I recommend it. It's on Netflix. I believe, Frank, you said,
Yep.
check it out. Let us know what you think. It is, again, a true story. It's very strange. All right. Moving on, this is our final streamer watch of the episode. We got Wonka, and Frank. He's the real MVP on the Wonka, because he went out. He got this. He put it up on the Movies Anywhere, and I was able to watch this. So thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And it's funny. We didn't plan this. That we're talking about 2 prequels tonight. Hunger Games and now Wonka. Wonka tells the story of how Willy Wonka essentially became Willy Wonka. And this was when I saw that it was coming out, I wasn't disinterested in it, but it wasn't on the list of need to go see or need to watch. I was curious. I like the original. I'm a fan of the Tim Burton one. And I guess it's been 20 years again, so it makes sense that they're bringing it back for a new generation. It was recommended very highly by a student of mine. She apparently went over Christmas break and saw it with her family, and she said it was wonderful. And I said, okay, well, when it hits streaming, I'll definitely watch it. And that's how Matt and I both were able to watch it. And I will tell you, I didn't love Wonka. I don't think I love the Tim Burton or love the original. I think I kind of feel the same way about all 3 of them. It's Willy Wonka. It's entertaining. Just an hour and a half where you smile, you laugh a little bit, you get some musical numbers. Really puts you in the zone to want some candy. But ultimately, I don't know if I would rewatch it 5 or 6 times. It's for kids.
Yeah, I would say the same. I watched it, and I was interested in this. I wasn't gonna go rush to the theater, though. I was definitely gonna wait till it was like something I could do at home, and if I could get it, a streamer on it. But honestly, I had it on and I was watching it, and I was kind of half paying attention. It was really hard for it to keep my interest, but like you said, Frank, like the other ones, it's kind of the same thing. Like the original, there's only certain parts that I like. I'll pay attention to those, right?
Right.
The what is it? Is it Tim Burton with Johnny Depp?
Yes.
That remake, that I think I've seen that once. I would never watch it again. This one I would probably put on again. I have kids. My daughter, she likes music, and there's some good musical numbers in here. So I think it kind of makes it worth it, like you said, for kids.
I would watch, out of the 3 of them, I would watch this one again before the other 2. I really enjoyed the bad guy characters, how they were like the chocolate mafia. I thought
Yeah,
that was really funny. Keegan Michael Key from Key and Peele, he plays a police officer, and he's probably the best part of the movie, in
he
my
is.
opinion.
Yeah,
Uh,
he is.
yeah. I do have one small. Oh, him and the Oompa Loompa, the one Oompa Loompa that we get to see. He's pretty funny, and I think he shows up just enough. And if they would have brought him back for more scenes, it would have been like, all right, we get it. But I thought it was interesting how they did the Oompa Loompa. I will say this though, Timothy Chalamet, who plays young Wonka, believable that this kid grows up to be Willy Wonka for sure, but his singing voice was very one note. I just felt like he was just almost saying the songs versus singing the songs.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just my one nitpick.
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, if you had to ask me, stream or watch, I would say stream it, but I would stream it again if it's on a streaming service and made available to me.
So one of the great things about this movie is it's made by our friends over at Warner Brothers. and Warner Brothers is in charge of HBO Max or whatever the heck this app is called these days. So if you give it another 2, maybe 3 months, it will be available to watch on that app for if you're paying for it already. And I would tell you not to rush out and buy it, but definitely, like Matt said, if you have kids, my son is 3 years old, and it's very hard for him to like sit and watch something more than like the length of a Bluey episode. He sat and watched all of Wonka. So there's that.
There you go. 3-year-old Wonka movie for 3-year-olds.
That's right. 3-year-old approved.
Yeah, all right. Moving on, we got our next segment. We're bringing it back, Retro Counsel. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and I saw it on Netflix. I was like, I haven't seen this in a long time. I put it on. I was cracking up. I was texting Frank. I was texting another friend, and we were talking about the Blues Brothers. Ba-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
So Matt was texting me that the Blues Brothers is on Netflix. I don't know why. I was convinced that I had seen this movie long time ago. And the movie kicks off, and I'm thinking, like, I don't think I've seen this. Well, I will tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed this movie to the point where I give it a few more weeks and ask me again. I would argue this is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time, hands down.
Dude, it's a great movie. The music, the characters. I was even telling Frank. So there's a scene right where they're trying to get their band back together. Jake and Elliot, are the Blues Brothers. Jake was in Juliet, in prison. He just gets out. That's how the movie opens, right? And all Jake wants is, he wants to get the band back together, wants to start doing music and
Because
stuff
he
like
got the
that.
sign, he receives a sign from God.
Well, yeah, so they grew up in an orphanage, and the orphanage they're basically being shut down or evicted because I believe it was like taxes. They owed so much money in taxes. And so the nun who runs it, they call her the penguin, which I'm cracking up because if you ever went to Catholic school, right?
Right. In fact, I was telling my dad, like, hey, I'm watching the Blues Brothers. His first thing that he texted me was, have you seen the penguin yet? And that scene had just happened. So I was like, oh yeah.
Right. So she's explaining this to them, and he's like, and Jake's like, it's like, that no problem. We'll have that to you by the morning. Meaning, they're gonna go rob somebody, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, no, it has to be. I don't want your filthy money. It has to be honest. And she casts them out, right? So they're on a mission from God.
That's
Yeah,
right. They
that's
can't stop us. We're on a mission from God.
right, right. So they just go on this crazy journey, and so on the journey, they have to get the band back together. So they end up, at this like little spot, right, where they're grabbing a bite to eat, trying to get, their one guitar player, and I believe he's like a saxophone player. Yeah, they're up there,
Right.
yeah, with the one, he's married now to, and they own this spot. So they order food, and Elliot, played by Dan Aykroyd, he orders plain white toast, dry. No butter, no jam, no jelly, like nothing. Right,
Just dry, ma'am.
just dry. And she's like, "You want anything to drink with that?" And he goes, "No, ma'am." Right. So she looks at Jake, played by John Belushi, right? And he goes, "I'll take 4 fried chickens and a Coke." And she's like, "You want, drums or like thighs or whatever?" And he's like, 4 fried chickens and a Coke.
I think I think that is a great scene. I mean, the movie's just full of, it's like scene after scene after scene. It's hard to pick
But the
my
reason why
favorite.
I wanted to bring that up though is because I think there needs to be a virtual challenge or like a challenge like on like
Oh,
TikTok or whatever, right? Where you go into a restaurant and you do a Blues Brothers order, right? And you can go with a friend, right? Where one person orders, Elliot's order, or the other one orders Jake's, or if it was me and I was going in by myself, I'm just going to order dry white toast,
right.
nothing.
Yeah, I think that would to me, in my mind, and I watch a lot of idiots on YouTube do food challenges. To me, the couple slices of plain white toast dry versus 4 fried chickens and a Coke, the toast sounds just like doable for me, But yeah, I think there. What do you call it? A trend or whatever? A challenge. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know the kids. We're old. I don't know what the kids call them.
yeah. You message us when you like and share this video or podcast, and you let us know in the comments. But I think that would be great. I think we were joking around and say extra points if you sit there and eat it, and then just like get up and pay and leave without saying a word.
Yeah, even extra point. You show up in a Blues Brothers outfit, so they literally just go in like black suits, right, with a black tie, white shirt,
Right.
Ray Bans. That's I always wanted Ray Bans because of the Blues Brothers. Like watching that movie growing up. But yeah, I mean, and it's really almost like one of those early movies that has a lot of celebrities in it too. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of big in this movie.
And that was part of the fun for me watching it. It's like, oh my god, there's so and so, there's so and so, and but just the whole movie and the whole concept is so off the wall. You can't help but just be like sucked in by it, and like you want to see these two idiots succeed so badly. I don't know what it is. Like you just like you're at the edge of your seat the entire time, and for them to succeed on their mission from God, but also just like the humor and the characters, but honestly, the music when they sing and they dance and just there's I want to say there's every type of like if you've ever watched a bunch of musicals, each musical number is like a different type. Like they're not all the same, and there's like a concert one, there's like everybody's dancing in the street, there's just another few. I don't want to spoil everything for you, but like man, I just thought it was great. And Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi do their own singing. They the Blues Brothers, if you don't know, started off as an SNL skit, and then they just recorded blues albums, and that's how the album sold so well that they made the movie, and that's just kind of how it came to be. But I would say also another great point is outside of the musical numbers and the humor, there's two awesome car chases.
The whole movie's just hilarious, and
Yeah,
like some of the stuff is just over the top, and I'm cracking up the whole time. But we've talked about it before, and really, I think music sets a movie over the top, right?
right.
And the music in this is perfect. I even remember kind of growing up. There were especially like at these beach location spots. I forget what the spot was called. It was like Celebrity or something like that. But they would have people dressed up like Michael Jackson, Britney Spears, and one of the acts always won because my dad loved these things, and we would always go. And one of the acts that was always there was the Blues Brothers, and these
Right.
guys would come out and do that whole bit, and that was my favorite part of going because I love the movie and the music so much.
One of the trips to Universal Studios that my family and I went on with my family, I remember they had people at Universal Studios acting out the Blues Brothers. They were on the stage, and we were trying to go Jurassic Park ride or whatever. And my dad was like, "Stop! We got to watch this. You guys are gonna love it." And I just remember like not knowing what it was and still enjoying it. It's just like these two idiots up on stage, doing a great thing. I think my favorite, I love Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd, to me, the more I see of Dan Aykroyd, the more and more I love Dan Aykroyd. In fact, I think we need more Dan Aykroyd in our lives. But I love his character, how he has that case that he keeps his harmonica in, and it's handcuffed to him. He keeps it's kind of like his utility belt. Whatever the plot demands of the Blues Brothers, it's like, oh, we need such and such. He just like reaches in and pulls it out. Like it's almost like it's like a magician. It's like Wonka's hat. He just keeps pulling crap out of it that doesn't make sense for him to have. You know.
It's funny you bring that up, because I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, Dan Aykroyd. I was like, this is our second Retro Council recommendation of Dan Aykroyd.
Absolutely. And now I'm kind of thinking like maybe Retro Council should be Dan Aykroyd based, but not just.
I mean, I have a few others, like, I mean, him in the '80s, it was great.
Yeah,
There's a lot of great films.
I enjoyed the Blues Brothers so much, and Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi too, that I rewatched Animal House, and it's the same director too, and it's just as funny as I remember it being. But I then watched the original two Ghostbusters back to back because I just wanted more 80s Dan Aykroyd, and it was great. He's so funny.
Yeah, so I mean, like, for those of you who haven't seen it, you're missing out.
Right.
You need to watch this movie. It is definitely something you will not regret. Hopefully, it's still on Netflix because that's where I watched it. I know Frank, you watched it. I told other people there, so hopefully, it's still up there.
I will tell you that I know we're not in streamer Botch anymore, but if you listen to this episode late and it's no longer on Netflix, rent it or buy it. Trust me. Like, this is one, if you are a fan of the like comedies of that era, this is like the king of those comedies. It's just so good. I wouldn't, well, maybe I would say I'd put it on the level of Stripes. Stripes is just so good too. That could be another retro council. We do Stripes.
I am a fan of Stripes, and maybe that is one we do for a future episode. Kind of give you our thoughts on that. But
Right.
any final words on the Blues Brothers here?
They can't stop us. We're on a mission from God, Matt.
Yeah, we keep putting out these podcasts for you, the people. Even though there's only 10 of you, because we're on a mission for God. All
Well,
right.
um, before we wrap things up tonight, you had brought up like there's something on the horizon, that we're going to be doing, but there is something else that I say we, but it's Matt. I have nothing to do with this, Matt. Tell them what your other videos that you're releasing on the channel.
Yeah, so it's funny. We're really expanding the Goody Room. The Goody Room is more than just podcasts, movies, shows, right? We talked about collecting. We talk about a lot of other things. One of the things that I've kind of gone into collecting wise, kind of brings me back to my childhood is card collecting. And so I've gotten my son into collecting Pokemon cards. So I started buying Pokemon 151 packs, which is the original Pokemon that I grew up collecting. So I actually can pronounce these names and know who they are. But not only that, but football and hockey cards. So we do have a playlist on our YouTube. You won't catch, there's no like kind of podcast like kind of feel to it, so you won't catch it on any thing like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. These are specifically on YouTube. We have a playlist drop down where you can go. It's called Goody Room Rips, and it's me literally opening packs of football cards, Pokemon cards, hockey cards, and just having a good time seeing what I can get. And I've been really enjoying it. So, go check it out. I mean, it's fun. Right now I'm Charizard hunting.
So I grew up with Pokemon. I remember having some of the cards, and I remember getting some old basketball cards and collecting them as a kid. It was fun. I will tell you, as an adult, I don't give a crap about it. I really don't. However, I was watching Matt's recent Pokemon video as he just decided, like, I'm hunting for the original Charizard. I was on pins and needles the entire video. I was just so pumped. I was like, come on, like, where's the Charizard at? Where's the Charizard at? And I won't spoil the ending, but like, you definitely should get on our YouTube channel and check out Matt's videos. He does a great job.
Yeah, I wish I could get an original Charizard. These are kind of just recreations, but still same thing. Like, and
Right.
I remember you telling me that, so I appreciate it. But yeah, check it out, and we're gonna come out with more content. Doing different things because again, it's the Goody Room, right? And it's all kinds of goodies. It's not just specific to one item.
Right. And we know you want the goodies, all 10 of you.
Yeah, all 10 of you.
That's
But
right.
hey, that's gonna do it here for us today. And thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for supporting. We'll catch you same streaming time, same streaming service. Later, everybody.